Where not just women are in danger, but all marginalized people. Where being uniquely different right now might truly be considered a crime. It seems as though we had all slipped into a false sense of comfort, that justice would prevail and that good would win in the end. Well, good did not win this election, but good will win in the end. So what today means is that we are far from the end. Today marks the beginning of our story. The revolution starts here. The fight for the right to be free, to be who we are, to be equal. Let's march together through this darkness, and with each step, know that we are not afraid. That we are not alone. That we will not back down. That there is power in our unity, and that no opposing force stands a chance in the face of true solidarity. And to our detractors that insist that this march will never add up to anything,
Boston Red here with Friday Java, a weekly magazine of political theory, polling, and commentary. It is part of the history called people that make up this fascinating journey. We are part of the Obama network. For that, we make no apologies. What we pledge to do is give you the facts on a bridge to history. What body politics is, the most up-to-date theories of political science and psephology. Stay tuned for this incredible ride. Boston Red, peace out.
Friday Java. On the 11th of May 2018, we have the people from the University of Virginia, that is Larry Sabato's shop at Charlottesville. And we, of course, remember, as we normally do every week, the murder of Heather Heyer. An unnecessary murder, no doubt. As we spotlight a number of items here, the latest conflict between the Iranians that support the Syrian government of Bashar al-Assad and the Zionists in Israel. The impact of the treaty between a number of major powers, the Russian Federation, France, Germany, etc., on the issue of nuclear armaments in Iran. What stands out here is President Barack Obama administration negotiated this, which was progress. But the problem here remains from Wilsonian foreign policy, and this is the reason that the American government sponsors the racist acts of the Israeli regime. And this is the problem. That is the problem. It's not necessarily DJ Trump tearing up the agreement. That is just an outcome. And now there is a conflict between the two parties since the Golan Heights, the Yom Kippur War. But there will be more skirmishes, more armed conflict, more murders, but we already have murders there. Palestinians are being murdered, injured every day in that region. So it's not unusual to have some people killed. The only issue is the number of people killed before the international community really pays attention to this. There is a genocidal situation going on there, and it has been going on there for a very, very long time. But as we continue to get, say, small numbers of people, 25, 50 Palestinians killed at a time, hundreds injured, the world, most of the world, doesn't react to it. But this will get around, no doubt about that. In the Iran-Iraq war, hundreds of thousands of people were killed. And from what I gather from reading Haaretz and the Times of Israel, the Jerusalem Post, etc., that some of the military commanders with the Israeli Defense Forces understand this, that the Iranians are, and the military Defense Forces will stay committed to this. They are not some people that go away in a day or a week or a month. It's a prolonged military struggle, and of course they're in Syria and have been in Syria and will remain in Syria. They affirm the right of the Syrian people to defend themselves. Now, other Western media have came out on the side of the Zionists, and this is a problem. It's a false positive out there that has the Zionists on equal footings with the rest of these nations whom are supported by a majority of the world. If we look at China, the Russian Federation, start adding up numbers there, and Germany, France, the UK, all of these people signed on the accord. And we'll see now how that all plays out. The Germans are saying they will defend their businesses. They have evidently more trade there, not a lot of trade, like, I don't know, about 3 billion euros or something like that. Siemens and some others that deal with the Islamic Republic of Iran. So these are some of the things that will work themselves out. There were sectors in the U.S., particularly even in the Democratic Party, that opposed the accord from the very beginning. And the reason for this was the Wilsonian foreign policy, which is a racist foreign policy. An unfortunate situation, but many times when you have this sort of thing happening, it will play itself out on the battlefield. We have seen those activities before with the Baghdad War and the war in Kabul, Afghanistan, which is still going on. The dirty secret there is that these wars cost billions of dollars, and the American people end up paying for something that is really not necessary. The negotiation under President Obama's auspices with some of the so-called European powers, present and has been, were there, and the people most involved in it, the Russian Federation, is on their borders, and they have troops in Syria. So the situation is, if the Israelis fire missiles in there and kill some Russian troops, they could literally start a world war. And they don't have to worry about nuclear weapons with the Russian Federation. As V.I. Putin said, they have the capabilities to launch nuclear weapons in any part of the world. There's no doubt about that. So this is high stakes. It's not a negotiation for a hotel. That's one thing has to be remembered, and the whole complexion has changed. And DJ Trump should be congratulated for this, that he has now brought things to a head in that region. Whether or not it will turn into a region-wide war, we'll have to wait and see. That is one of the aspects that happen in these types of situations, and the people have to take the proper responsibility. It's not just about moving a capital to Jerusalem from Tel Aviv, where it should be. But when you start updating the tensions, and when you have the murders and the injuries going on, any other nation that would literally stoop as low as the Zionists would themselves be, in their leadership, would be on their way to the Hague. Tried for genocide. Could happen in this case also. So in other words, what DJ Trump and his America First operation has done is turn things upside down. Period. But do we read too much into this? No, we had a situation where there could have been a standoff, nuclear weapons going on the Korean Peninsula. Now they are starting to do some negotiation. Now, as to how serious it will be remains to be seen. But one thing is apparent. The Wilsonian foreign policy has to be flushed out of the Korean Peninsula. That will afford the Koreans to take care of their own nation-building business and unite into one common nation, not perhaps one, obviously, one political system, but into one common nation, trading partners, etc. And ultimately the U.S. will be out of that ball game. And again, we have a situation there that we have the Russian Federation, who has borders there. It is their domain in China. The U.S. has literally no business there. They've overstayed their welcome. Period. And this is the big problem right there. And this is why you go to a Mideast situation blown out of proportion. You let a tiny little nation there cause problems that cost the American people billions of dollars. And we have to add the Saudis and various other little sheikdoms to part of the puzzle there. And what is happening is that, again, that's addressing age-old, Stone Age problems that should not be addressed. They should have been addressed 30, 40 years ago. But they're all coming to a head now. Where it goes, we don't really know. It has the potential to bring all of these nation states, no matter how small they are, into a region-wide war. You had that when you had the Baghdad operation across Iraq, and it's still in turmoil today, all the way to Afghanistan. Afghanistan is in turmoil. And the conclusion is that no amount of U.S. troops in Kabul, in the surrounding countryside of Afghanistan, will solve that situation. Nor will it solve the situation in Iraq. And as far as Iran is concerned, since 1979, they have been maintaining. They are accustomed to the boycotts. Nothing has changed. What has changed, however, is that their allies, etc., have become much more aggressive in what they are doing. Let's move to some domestic news and more of this racist type operation going on here from WBRN Radio and on the Boston Red Network. An American student at Yale, sleeping and preparing a paper, was confronted by the police for sleeping in a common room while black. Was a graduate student there. She had papers and various anecdotal evidence that she was engaged in some type of academic activity. You don't go into a common area with your notebook, papers, etc. spread out, whether you're asleep or not. There, and it's not unusual. Students sleep all the time. But nonetheless, some nutty European student that had called the police before, called the police on Laleta Simubola. And the campus police came. They interviewed her and asked her for identification, which they should have not done. But they finally sorted it all out. And this is from the Washington Post. It was a part of a tense, racially tangled exchange that the African Studies student had this week with four police officers, a graduate student who called 911 after she found Samboya napping in the hall of a graduate studies on the 12th floor common room. Now, this European student had a history of calling the police on African Americans. And what struck me here was Brashers, I think is her name. She's 43 years old. That's a European student. Was taking pictures there. And then the police, I have every right to call the police. That's what Brashers said after snapping a photo of Simbola. Anyway, you cannot sleep in that room. This 43-year-old character was contradicted by the police once they got the facts from the Yale database. But the very reason that they had to go about this itself shows a lack of training on the part of these police officers. I mean, any moron would find someone in a common room with study papers about. Would they just force themselves into the university, bring computer, bring study papers and various other things, tables of books, whatever, of authority there? Period. So they had to check the ID and all of that. If he didn't have, what if she didn't have an ID on her? I mean, there are clues, deductive reasoning that you can use. Period. And that is a part of it. But this nut had called the police on another African American student and tried to ban him. I was looking over here at let's see. Well, for the Yale newspaper, the student newspaper has it on it. Yale responds after African American student. I'm going to change this around a little bit. Reported for napping in common room. They said black, but anyway, that's something we need to affirm. Anyway, early Thursday morning, the Yale police interrogated the graduate student, Leone Simbola. Anyway, for more than 15 minutes, and this Sarah Brashers, Braschch, about an unknown woman sleeping there. Well, they had a confrontation before. She lied. Anyway, this person is literally, the Brashers there, was 43 years old, a member of the New York Bar, which she should have known better. And on top of that, she'd been involved in so-called human rights activity. PhD candidate in philosophy. They called 911. And another student here, Jean-Louis Rizan, told the paper that he filed a complaint against Brashers in March after she called police on him because she did not believe he was a student. How the hell does she know who's a student and who's not a student? Is she the dean of students there? Evidently, that was a problem. A Yale police chief got involved in it. A woman called police to say that she was a student, and there was a woman sleeping in the common. So nonetheless, the protocol is for police to separate the parties involved. So 2 police officers stayed with the woman on the 5th floor, and investigating officers went with the caller to the 12th floor, wherever that was. So anyway, nonetheless, it was all written up there. The incidents were written up. The graduate school dean, Lynn Cooley, said in the email that incidents like that of last night remind us of continued work needs to be done. Well, no doubt they need to do some sensitivity training there, period. This Lodi, I suppose how you pronounce that, founded the Cultural Institute, Yoruba Cultural Institute, and Nollywood Diaspora film series. So she'd been involved in a number of things. The Market of Dreams. Oh, anyway, her first book, The Market of Dreams. She's been a busy woman also, the Sambola. And this other character here was Sarah Brashish. Scheduled to complete her PhD in 2020. That's according to the website. She's 43 years old. She graduated from the University of Minnesota with 2 engineering degrees, aerospace and mechanical. Then graduated from the Fordham Law School, that's in New York, in 2009. So she's been out there for a while. Is a member of the New York Bar. After law school, she worked for a human rights organization in France and studied philosophy at, Professor Reed in Tennessee at San Francisco State. Her secularism and women's rights advocacy included a number of things here in France, and she obtained an MA in philosophy to address the subhuman legal status of the world's women at the source. The philosophical foundations of law, that's what the Yale site said about her. On the San Francisco State, her master's candidate in philosophy, the school wrote, her graduating summa cum laude, engineering degree from the University of Minnesota. Sarah's path or its way into a career in the boutique hotel industry in Los Angeles and Miami. On her 30th birthday, brought into focus her desire to become an international human rights lawyer. So evidently she has issues here. Some allude that she's not stable. So we don't know. Said her experiences, which fights for universal human rights, founded in secular gender equality and gender desegregation, along with her work as the separation of church and state. Evidently she grew up a Jehovah's Witness. Really unfortunate situation here that this person, I'm a First Amendment lawyer, staunch church-state separatist, and profiler. Anyway, so this is basically the story of this woman that called her, also fought against hate crime laws. Well, if she fought against hate crime laws, she should understand what she's doing here. Be careful what you wish for. Why I hate crime legislation, but I love hate speech. Wait a minute. Let me make sure I got this right here. Okay, hate crimes. I'm not frequently verbally vilified for asserting claim that morality has no place in the law. Well, I agree with her there. She wrote in an article. She also wrote a piece on daylight atheism. Be careful what you wish for and why I hate crime legislation, but I love hate speech. She stated in her article with an anecdote about seeing a woman at the Berkeley campus, calling it barbarism. Anyway, I'm not sure. A great shame in writing my view on public anti-mask laws. Oh, I see. She was wearing a veil, basically. Great shame writing my view on public anti-mask laws. Oh, I see. gender segregation measures as well. There is no wait a minute. We have no more tolerant gender segregation in public space, and we can tolerate racial segregation in public places. Well, it's bizarre. She wrote about the incident, was accusing some of committing a hate crime against Muslims, I see. Anyway, won't get into her articles here. Also, she wrote a view that race does not exist. It's interesting. I had a doctor once tell me that, and that's the indication, actually, when people say these kinds of things, they are nothing more than gutter racists. Not nations, not religion, and not ethnic cities, nor culture, nor races. Group identification is inherently arbitrary and illusionary and fluid. Well, no doubt about that. And in her Daylight Atheism article, she said there are handfuls of misogynistic Islamicists who occasionally try their hand at debating me on subjects as U.S. constitutional law and abortion rights. Now, on her Facebook page, there's a little I enjoy more than publicly humiliating them online. In truth, I owe them a no small amount of gratitude every time they bait me. Well, she's been baited here. She wrote, in a democracy in the land of the free, who are we to tell people that they can't be slaves if they want to be? Well, wrote on the humanists, also drew attention after Yale video went virtual in the Post. So she wrote after winning a middle school debate by arguing the pro-slavery side. Oh boy. Now she and who is it there? Mr. What is that fool's name? But recently the rapper. Anyway, and indeed I did. I led our team to victory. She was in 2010. The pro-slavery contingent defeated the abolitionists, because in a democracy in the land of the free, who are we to tell people that they can't be slaves? Well, anyway, this kind of shows the side of this character. She grew up a Jehovah's Witness faith and had written about her anti-religious views. Comparing her upbringing to being a slave. Person is very confused. Person is a Minnesota native. She also lived in Wisconsin. She grew up in the Jehovah's Witness faith. She has been estranged from her mother for more than 20 years because she left her religion. In 2020, the humanist virtuous compared her religious upbringing to slavery. Well, no doubt there's a lot of issues here. This is from a heavy, I think enough about her, but yeah, this is a psychiatrist, as they say, thing. The Humanist published 2 articles from the author on outside the contributor, not a staff member, a religious, a regular blogger, anyway. Humanist has always been doing some right thing. This is in 2010, 8 years ago. I don't spend too much time on this clown, but you kind of see where that was Kelly West. I've forgotten that fool's name, but anyway, he also was on the pro-slavery issue there. I guess he wanted to be a slave. Maybe if he go back a few hundred years, he would be there as one. But this person is a nutcase. Let me just finish up here. It started with the Washington Post. We'll have to save loyalty uneasy in Trump's Midwest. This is from the Washington Post. We'll save this to another time. We'll go now to the University of Virginia. That's at Charlottesville. And ratings change here. This is by Kyle Kondik and Jeffrey Skilling, writing for the Crystal Ball. And the key points from their article. Now we left crazy Sarah, whatever her name was, behind. The Republican primary voters avoided self-inflicted wound in West Virginia when a disgraced coal baron, Don Blankenship, finished third in their contest. Well, didn't really matter anyway. Much else to be expected on the night. Now, some of the races here have changed. This is open seat in Tennessee, like a Republican, leans Republican. And in West Virginia, Joe Meacham there, leans Democrat, is a toss-up now. In the Commonwealth, Massachusetts, this is old Charlie Baker. They say it's a safe Republican seat. I think the Democrats don't have anybody running against it. It's unfortunate. And in North Carolina, 9, that is Pittenger, leans Republican now to a toss-up. That's a House seat. In Ohio, 16, a safe Republican, Renichi there. Anyway, Tuesday nights, marquee primary came in West Virginia. The rumors based on internal polls suggested that Blankenship, a disgraced former coal company person who had recently served jail time for ignoring a federal mine safety laws. He should still be in jail. Blankenship ended up in third, was poised to win the Republican nomination. Well, that'd been a good deal. But nonetheless, he ended up in third place. In the event, Republican primary voters, in West Virginia avoided making a silly decision. They ultimately picked the Attorney General, Morrissey, over a second place there, a representative named Evan Jenkins. That'll face Joe Meacham, the former governor there, in November. We thought Jenkins might be a better choice for Republicans. He is from the southern part of the state where Meacham will need a mansion, will need to do well. And Jenkins' party switched prior to his 2014 House victory would have not been a liability in the state. Of course, yeah, right. DJ Trump won by 42 points. That's an interesting situation because in 1988, Michael Dukakis, our own Michael Dukakis, Professor Dukakis, won in West Virginia. So Morrissey is perfectly capable of beating Manchin, and we're moving the race to a toss-up. Well, we'll see about that. This is one of the big things that always head out there. Joe Meacham has been the governor there, and at the same time, he is a conservative Democrat, voted with DJ Trump more than one time, and one can see what that will bring him. Now, that is one of the seats, another seat in Missouri, a number of places that the Democrats could come up short in November, and there's some places that will turn over. So we'll see where the Senate will stand. Action still in the House. In, let's see, Ohio, this is this representative that Renucci in Ohio, 16, won the primary there. Mike Gibbons. He got less than 50% of the vote. I'm not sure what the Democrats. Let's see, incumbent. Sherrod Brown. Oh, he's running. Is he running for the Senate there? Huh. The vote and perhaps need a little boost from the president, which he's been getting. That's the Senate primary. Yeah, we'll see where that. Sherrod Brown, of course, is a liberal, but he's from the Appalachian part of Ohio. Down in Tennessee, Breedenson, a former governor there, is running ahead of this Marsha Blackburn by 10 points. And, of course, they're cautious there. Things obviously could change in Tennessee. There's some polls out here, but not really very much polling. Middle Tennessee State, a Mason-Dixon poll. He had him up by 3 points, which is nothing. Survey Monkey, but these are back in April by 1 point, the average of 4.67. So where this race is, we'll have to wait on some better polling that it will shape up, as one would say. And let's go here. Democrats have spent the last few years earnestly hoping for blue Texas. Well, it takes a while in Texas, as Paula Lackshaw said. The Great Gatsby, anyway, the 2018 cycle might present a choice for a seemingly remote dream to come true amid surveys from Quinnipiac University. I mispronounced that university. It found that incumbent aligned Ted Cruz leading Beto O'Rourke by just 3 points. The Republican Independent Observers, they question that. Yeah, it's probably more than that. Anyway, is certainly fundraising like a first-tier challenger. Surprisingly, he ended the first quarter of 2018 with more money in his war chest than Lion Ted. Well, that's unusual right there. There's a lot of money there, $8 million, as Lion Ted, I guess, had 7.2. But don't be deceived by that. There's a lot of independent groups out there. Cruz raised $15 million in 2012 Senate bid, which included a hard-fought primary contest. That was Lieutenant Governor Dewhurst there. Remember that one? But easy general election over Paul Sadler. If O'Rourke can maintain his fundraising pace, Cruz does provide him a potential for Democratic donors there. Anyway, that's an interesting situation there. We'll have to see on that one. We've been debating internally over which race Tennessee are. Texas ranks third or Democratic target list, whereas Tennessee was 29 points to the right of the national two-party popular vote. Texas was only at 12 points. Well, Texas has improved there, no doubt about that. Let's see. Candidates quietly may give Tennessee the edge in a debate over which state is truly Democratic. Well, the situation is, of course, Al Gore, remember one time was senator of Tennessee, so was his father, and Reason had been the governor there. Well, that's back in 1990. That's 30 years ago, but Al Gore was there. At 74, I didn't know Reason was 74. He also has maybe a one-timer. Well, no doubt about that. He would be a one-timer. Crystal Ball still views Blackburn as a favorite when Gore ran for president 10 years after last going in front of Tennessee voters. That was in 1990. He lost his home state, very close, though, 51-47 to G.W. Bush. And had he won his home state, he would be in the president. Breeden narrowly lost 12 years after his last election. Would not surprise me. That's type of outcome with narrowly losing 12 years, yeah. Well, it depends a lot where the nation is. It's going to depend a lot where the economy is. So there's some things going there. Ratings in Tennessee and West Virginia reflect a more broadly competitive Senate map. No doubt about that. Just looking at some things, they have Texas red. There are a lot of states are not in this. The governors, well, Mike DeWine, and of course, our own Dennis Kucinich got defeated. Richard Cadre, as in Ohio, leans Republican rating there, although it could move to a toss-up before long. Well, possibly so. And, of course, Charlie Baker, unfortunately, safe Republican. I don't know if the Democrats even have a challenger in there. They may not. And Phil Scott, probably that's in Vermont, is a little less of a favor than Baker is in liberal Vermont, but this is a strong position to be in. Chris Sununu in New Hampshire. Larry Hogan. Now, this is one that leans Republican, but approval rating is strong, and the opposition uncertain. See how Maryland fares up there. I need to look at Maryland again. Our own ex-NAACP leader was running there in Maryland. So we're not really certain. Let me see here. The mayor of Newton recently dropped out of the race. Well, this is in the Commonwealth here. Hogan in Maryland leans Republican there. And 3 of them are among the most Democratic states in the nation. That's true. There's no excuse in the Commonwealth of having this Charlie Baker around. The Democratic Party on the legislative end of it has occupied both houses, but in the governor's chair, our own Martha Coatley came up short. That's very unfortunate. That was a race Martha probably should have won. Anyway, what can we say about that? Period. Tomorrow night we'll have the Pew Public Supports U.S. talks with the Democratic Republic of Korea. Many doubt its leaders are serious. Anyway, we'll have this tomorrow night. And on Numbers Man, we'll talk about the Consumer Price Index. It was out on the 10th yesterday. So we'll have that on Numbers Man. We have a number of things coming up this weekend. Let's go to ESPN. It's short and sweet this time around. No NBA. We only had one hockey game going on here for the National Hockey League. The Jets and the Predators, I think, of Nashville. The Winnipeg scored. Jets 5-1 was that score in that series. That's the first round from Nashville. Anyway, Predators there. Predators didn't win. Let's see. Well, maybe Game 7. Sorry about that. Winnipeg wins the series 4-3. So that was the end of our Predators. Winnipeg jetted on past them. Anyway, as for the NBA, big game on Sunday night. The Cavaliers will, of course, be in Boston. And we'll see what we see. Major League Baseball, let's get the scores in here. The Giants were in Philadelphia. Phillies 6-3. Boston was in New York, 5-4. Pulled up winning that game. And the Royals were in Baltimore, Cannon Yard. The Orioles finally won the game, 11-6. The Mariners were in Toronto, 9-1 was the score. Mariners. Atlanta was in Florida, 9-2 was the score. That Atlanta over the Marlins. The Brewers were in the Rockies. Brewers 5-2 over the Rockies. And in 11, the Nationals and D-backs in Arizona. 2-1 the Nationals over the D-backs. And the Twins were in Los Angeles, Angels 7-4. And the Reds were in Los Angeles, and they beat the Dodgers 4-1. The Cardinals were in San Diego, and they finally won a game 2-1 there. They'd been sort of on the skids. They didn't get into it. We'll get into some more of this on the weekend. I'd like to hear the Cardinals broadcasters there go at it. Same as we like to hear Susan Walden and a company there, the New York broadcasters, some of our favorite broadcasters there, and of course our own for the Giants there. Used to be with Joe Morgan, and he's still with the Giants. They used to do, what was it, Sunday night baseball, I believe it was, there. So nonetheless, he is still in the game of broadcasting, that is. That'll do it for sports here. And I don't know why his name slipped my memory there. Thinking of everyone else but him. And why? Anyway, can't think of the other Giants broadcaster either right now. But anyway, it's one of those that's been around for a very long time. And I'm not sure on some of the other broadcasters. One of the, I suppose, positive things about listening to a lot of these games, not only you learn the players, but you learn some of the local broadcasters, who they are, and especially those that have been in the business a very long time there. Whereas the teams change over. Some of the pitchers, obviously you remember that have been around several seasons, particularly with the Giants and with the Dodgers. Let's see, the Giants is what's his name? Not sure about that. If he's injured now, not injured. Up and down kind of ball game going there. Anyway, this will do it for us. We'll have a Numbers Man. That's our financial program. That will be on the weekend here. And we have an open source report coming up. And what else do we have? Oh, the week that was. We'll put some of this in that we normally put in. We will hear from Uncle Carrobe. He'll be here on Saturday as usual, not to count the Republicans out. We were not doing that. Looking at some of the polling lately, DJ Trump's been up by a couple of points. There, we'll see what happens with the meeting actually in Singapore with Field Marshal the Democratic Republic. They'll be meeting in Singapore. I believe it's on the 12th or 15th of June. So it's about a month off. That meeting will occur there. And let's see what else we got going. Well, that's basically about it. We spent a little time on the situation at Yale, and the reason for that is profiling. We've had it at Starbucks. We've had a lot of profiling going on. And evidently this woman, if the Yale police had checked their database, she was a serial profiler. And some, at least in the heavy article, had indicated she was a nutcase. We don't know if she's a nutcase or not a nutcase, but a possibility, as they say there. Difficult to say. That will play out, I suppose, in days to come once you make the big time. She made the big time, the Washington Post. So now it's a national story. It's been on social media, on Facebook, and other places, as they say. Nonetheless, have a good weekend. We'll talk to you on Saturday morning. Good day.